Hey guys, welcome to another video with Lim Reviews. Today I have two very similar devices here in front of me. So on one hand I have the Honor Magic 2 and on the other I have the Xiaomi Mi Mix 3. So why are these phones so similar? That is because they're both sliding phones. Okay, so before we just begin, let me just briefly go through the specs. Essentially, the Honor Magic 2 is using the latest and strongest processor from Huawei, which is the Kirin 980, and on the Mix 3, it is using the latest from Snapdragon, the 845. So I purchased these two phones very similarly in terms of specs. Both has 6GB of RAM and 128GB of internal memory. So they're both expandable via micro SD. Next, they both have over 3000 mAh of battery. The Magic 2 has 3500 and the Mix 3 has 3200. So another difference is the camera setup. On the Magic 2, it uses a 3-camera setup, a 3-sensor setup. It has a monochrome sensor, a wide-angle sensor, and a normal sensor. On the Mix, it is a standard dual-lens camera. So one for normal photos and the other for telephotos. On the front, they both have dual selfie cameras. These cameras allows for you to take selfies with a bokeh mode. The build quality of both devices are very solid. However, I feel that the Mix 3 is slightly heavier than the Magic 2. Besides that, for those of you who wants to know the benchmark scores for both devices, on my left is the Magic 2 and on my right is the Mix 3. So you can see very clearly here that the Mix 3 has a higher score than the Magic 2. But I'll let you evaluate for yourselves the results. Let's talk about the sliding mechanism. So the sliding mechanism on the Magic 2 is very smooth. It slides down easily and goes back up the same. So very easy to slide. On the Mix 3, it is more springy. So for example, if you listen to the sound, you can hear that it is a tighter spring and it is not as smooth as the Magic 2. So this really depends on your personal preference. You may accidentally swipe the Magic 2 because it is so smooth. For the Mix, it is more difficult to get accidental swipes because it is a tighter slide. So I personally prefer the one on the Magic 2 because I feel that it is very easy to slide. But some of you may prefer the tighter slide on the Mix 3. So one issue I have with the sliding mechanism of the Mix 3 is when I put in my USB cable, I am not able to slide the phone open. And that is because the phone slides from the top, whereas on the Honor, it slides away from the bottom. So for this, you can see that my USB cable is plugged in, but I can't push it down because the sliding is hitting against the USB cable. When I remove it, you can move it. But you can see for the Magic 2, because the sliding mechanism is moving away from the bottom, so it doesn't hit against the USB cable. So you can slide it very well. So I think this is a design flaw and it could have been avoided. But again, depending on your USB cable, if you're using the one that comes in the box, you should slide down perfectly fine. But if you're using a third-party cable that is slightly thicker in terms of the size of the cable, then you may have some issues with the Mix 3. So moving on to the fingerprint scanner. The Magic 2 has a fingerprint scanner that is on the front underneath the screen, whereas the Mix 3 has a standard fingerprint scanner that lies on the back. So for this, all you need to do is just tap and you're in right away. However, I do find that sometimes it is a hit or miss affair and it doesn't register very well. So for now, it is doing quite fine, but occasionally it will say that your finger is a bit wet and it will ask you to wipe it dry even though it is perfectly dry. So in terms of unlocking the device, I think the fingerprint scanner on the Mix 3 is better because it is just your standard fingerprint scanner and you do not need to rely on this to unlock your device. So again, it depends on personal preference, but in terms of accuracy, I would say the one on the Mix 3 wins the one on the Magic 2. Okay, so now let's move on to the displays. Both these devices have very nice AMOLED displays. I have brought them outdoors and they both perform very well under the sun. However, in some circumstances, I do feel that the one on the Mix 3 looks slightly brighter than the one on the Magic 2, but it is very similar. So they're both great displays, they both have great viewing angles, and you will not be disappointed by the displays. Okay, moving on to the user experience. Both these devices uses very good hardware, so obviously there is not much lags, it is very smooth. You can see that both Huawei skin and Xiaomi skin doesn't really affect the performance and the speed of the devices. But one thing that you should note is on the Magic 2, occasionally you can see that there is a bit of drop in frame rate. Like when the apps close, it kind of stutters. Whereas on the Mix 3, it closes slightly smoother. There is not much of a drop in frame rate, and you can see it is very quick. Okay, now let's talk about the speakers on both phones. Both devices have bottom firing speakers. And what I can say is the one on the Mix 3 is slightly clearer than the one on the Magic 2. So the Mix 3 has a clearer sound, but in terms of volume, both can get pretty loud. Moving on to the battery life. The Magic 2 has a 3500 mAh battery, and the Mix 3 has a 3200 mAh battery. After using both these devices, I find that the battery life on the Magic 2 is obviously better than the one on the Mix 3. So yesterday I was taking a lot of photos outdoors, and I do notice that after like 30 minutes of taking photos, the Magic 2 only dropped about 5 to 6% of battery, but the Mix 3 dropped about 10% of battery. So it is pretty obvious that the Magic 2 has a better battery. In terms of quick charging, both these devices have quick charge, but the charger provided in the Magic 2 is quicker than the one on the Mix 3. Okay, now that we've covered most parts of the devices, we move on to the most important part, the cameras. So I'm not going to talk about how many megapixels both these cameras have, but I'm going to show you the samples that were taken from these two devices.
Okay, so just looking at the pictures here, on the left we have the Magic 2 and on the right we have the Mix 3. So just press pause at any given time to see the differences between both images. So during the day, it is pretty obvious that the pictures taken on the Mix 3 is more saturated and slightly brighter than the Magic 2. So it really depends on what you prefer. If you like images that turns out very saturated, the Mix 3 is for you. But if you prefer a more natural outlook, the Magic 2 is for you. Okay, so now let's move on to the night shots. Let's take a look at this picture. One thing I really hate about the Magic 2 is it smoothens out every single photo which has some kind of skin in it. And it is horrible. So this is just a picture of the back, but imagine your hands, your face or whatever. The Magic 2 will beautify the hell out of you and make your skin look really smooth. So if that's your thing, yeah, just go for the Magic 2. Okay, so both devices has night mode, and it turns out that both devices can take some really good shots with night mode turned on. So just take a look at these pictures. All of these are taken using the night mode. One thing to note is the Magic 2 is a bit slow in terms of taking the night mode, so some images may appear blurry. Okay, so what does the Magic 2 has that the Mix 3 doesn't have? It is the ultra wide lens, and this is the kind of shot you can expect. And this is a black and white image, a monochrome image, which is also something that you can only get on the Magic 2.
Okay guys, now that we're at the end of the video, I would just like to provide you with my quick summary. So both devices perform very similarly. Both are using some very great hardware. Both have awesome build quality. They both look amazing. They both have great displays as well. So the main thing that differentiates both devices is the Magic 2 costs slightly more than the Mix 3, and there is a reason for that. The Magic 2 is about $550 whereas the Mix 3 is $480. But what the Magic 2 offers is an extra sensor at the back. So it gives you the wide angle camera, and you can take some really interesting shots with it. So at the end of the day, what you should really ask yourself is, do you need the extra wide angle sensor? If you feel it justifies the additional $70, then you should go with the Magic 2. If not, you can go with the Mix 3. So before I end my video, there is just one last point that I would like to mention. So at the end of the day, although these devices come with some really cool sliding mechanisms, I still think that the conventional camera at the top is better. The reason why I say that is because I just do not like to keep sliding my phone. I feel that it is an extra task of sliding up and then sliding back down again. I do get it that some of you may find it pretty cool, but eventually the coolness dies down and you find that having to slide all the time is pretty annoying. But that's just me. I've heard that some people actually get addicted to sliding the phones. I don't know if that is a thing, but yeah. So my personal opinion is, given a choice, I'm not sure if using the sliding mechanism is the best way to get rid of the notch fully. But yeah, for now it is a pretty cool one. Just that it gets annoying over times that you have to keep sliding. Alright guys, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!